you talked about expressions and you talked about ways of expression. I remember I saw this thing where it was like the first artistic thing was this wall where the cavemen had put blood in their hands and just like stamped it there, and it was like thousands of years old, and it's like this was the first artistic painting. And I was just thinking, like, that's crazy how artists are just people who just don't want to be forgotten throughout time, and they're just like, oh no, like this is me, and I was here, and this individual with this kind of brain neuron cells in their mind, how they all connect, these experiences, all these things, it exists and they exist, and they want people to remember that going forward. And I think such a brilliant way we show that, which I still don't understand, is paintings. And like I know we've spoken about your art today, but I know a big part of your life is also paintings. So talk to me about your hobbies, maybe your passion in painting, and where that stemmed from also, and like what do you gain from that? What kind of meaning do you gain from also painting too? And we're back. Thank you very much. So as you can see, it's going reasonably darker because we're outside. Good thing is it's actually a warm day. It's not too bad, right? And so we're out here. Do you remember where we were? I remember you said you wanted to speak something about Neil Gaiman, so we'll do that, and then I'll try to think of where we were again.
Yeah. Okay. So earlier, okay, we're speaking about Neil Gaiman and how important he is, because he's a great children's writer. But first, let me just quickly tell you, he's not just a children's writer, okay? He's a psychologically probing writer. You know, like he'll get to the point, get to your nerve inside your heart, squeeze it, and then when you feel like you can't have enough more pain, he'll let go and be like, okay, that was chill. If you've seen his Twitter account, he talks about how like he'll tease his readers and viewers because he writes scripts as well. He wrote the scripts to Good Omens and also the with Terry Pratchett, I believe his name is. And it's basically about an angel and a demon. If you haven't seen it before, it's about an angel and a demon who have basically been following each other's paths for a long while, for millions of years, just to get to the point of Armageddon, where the Satan takes over and tries to fight angels and stuff. But then along the way, they make friends, maybe even lovers, which is adorable. We all love that. And all I have to say is, the last episode of season 2, you'll need tissues to cry in.
You just spoiled the whole show. You just spoiled the whole show.
I didn't. Bro, this is 4 years old. This is not a spoiler.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. It's your fault. It's your fault. If you haven't seen it.
If you haven't seen it, but I would recommend getting the script book, because honestly though, Neil Gaiman, he finds a way to appeal to children and adults in different ways. Adults can appreciate his psychological stuff, and yes, I just thought that was important to say because I still read his books today.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, go and read Neil Gaiman. I need to get on Neil Gaiman. Actually, you're right. You should put me on. You just put me on. That's one of the writers that I've still yet to like really delve into. Like I said before, I really like always pay attention to the classics, but like the modern writers, I still gotta really like delve into properly. So definitely, that's one thing I'll have to do. But I mean, speaking of jumping from Neil Gaiman to like more like musical influences, I know that's a very big part of a creative's life. You know, like I remember, like for me, especially when I really started getting into music, is when I really start creatively kind of like flourishing. I feel like there's definitely a link between that, like just the way the music helps you kind of tap into different aspects of yourself. And for me, especially as a poet, like hearing, like seeing how lyrics work and seeing how like just artists or something put lyrics on a piece of paper, I can just look at that just like without the music and be like, that's amazing. But like, even with the music, it just has a different feel. And I know that you've mentioned some of your favorite artists to me, but like you can just go on that. Who are some of your favorite artists? Some of your favorite songs? You know, can you elaborate on like how these how these influence your writing, or just even your personal life? How they've kind of like shaped your journey so far?
Okay, so I do remember the last time we spoke that my favorite artists was the one of my favourite songs were the Achilles Come Down and Valerie. And it's still kind of true, like they're still definitely part of the journey. But currently I have been listening to more things.
Okay.
And Velvet Underground.
Okay, I've never heard of Velvet Underground.
Well, they've been around for a long while, probably longer than I've existed. But they...
That's crazy, by the way.
I know. They've been a while. Like, honestly, I think I'm more into the sort of... Can't even speak right now.
You're more into so you've had like a change. You've gone from like really liking Valerie. I mean, okay, speak on Valerie then. Speak on Valerie and Achilles Come Down. What is it about that song? Because I've heard that song. You put me on. Like, there's lyrics are crazy. But yeah, speak more on that song and why it like really resonated with you at the beginning.
So we'll start with Achilles Come Down. Basically...
How does it go? Do you remember?
Achilles come down. Won't you jumping off the roof?
Okay, that's enough. You have to pay for the rest.
Exactly. Spotify. Jeff and Jasmine.
Coming out. We're going.
Okay, so this song has 2 parts to it. 2 voices basically. One of them is Achilles, and the other one is another voice speaking to him in his head, right? In the lyrics, he's on a roof, deciding whether to jump off or not. And the entire song is basically him trying to convince himself whether to jump or not to jump, to be or not to be.
To be or not to be.
And it's a really important song because it sort of encompasses like your kind of tearing mind decisions, where it's like you are either doing something for yourself or for others, and you can't tell which is which. You can't tell if you, like in case of Achilles in the song, he can't tell whether he's dying for himself or for other people, and he can't tell what's real, what's not, who hates him, who loves him. But the main aspect of it is that you shouldn't really care, because it's like it's your own life. Like, you can decide whether to take the jump or not, because it's like who knows what's down there. What if it's just like a trampoline, you know? Who knows?
Back up. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like even building from that, that's one of your favorite songs also, and then Valerie too by Amy Winehouse, who is weird too because you see the similarities right there, right? Just Amy's whole thing is just about just brutal honesty, brutal transparency, and he had really a struggle with addiction, which she ended up tragically losing. But like just that whole process. What do you think about these types of songs that attracts you and makes you kind of like resonate with them on a deep level?
So with Valerie, it's very upbeat song, but the lyrics of it obviously is a bit deeper than that, as with most songs. I think it's very longing for another person. Like, she's wanting to long for someone and depend on them, but they're so unpredictable that you can't depend on them, because it's very that you'll depend on them one day and then they'll be in another place the next day, and then you can't depend on them, but you want to because you love them. So it's like,
it's a bit of shade, but okay.
Yeah, it's very sad, but that song kind of prepares you for all those different things you'll go through in life, and it's like the ability to become independent from someone while still loving them is like a big challenge for some people, because some people do mistake dependence for love.
Why do you think people do that?
I think it's because some people, I've had my own experience is like you don't really know what love is until you do. It's like you hear that as a kid, like when you say that you have a crush on someone, and then your parents say you don't love them. You won't know until you do, and then it's like when you do experience it,
you're like, that's not how.
It's like that's not how love is. Like, I love my cat.
But yeah, when you do experience it, it's different.
Yeah, it's because then people will either not experience it or won't allow themselves to experience it because it's so scary, because it's in the unknown, right? No one likes the unknown. And if you go into a relationship where nothing's known and you don't allow yourself to love someone, it's like, well, you're kind of screwed there, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because, the ball's in their court, basically.
Yeah.
But the thing that people don't realise is that they think the ball is in your court. It's like there is no ball, there is no court. Love is not a battlefield. I mean, it kind of is, but not really. It's yeah, that song is basically just a big kind of reminder of that, dependence versus love thing.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like, even back to what we were speaking before, we went off the first time about that movie, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and that kind of thing about the seesaw of love and how we kind of treat it like it's a competition, but in the end it's just two people just really just struggling to find connection and wanting to find connection and wanting the other person to be that person where they find a connection with. But I think it's always scary because they feel like if they make the jump, then the other person just leave them hanging. But it was always beautiful. I think that's why romantic movies always resonate with people, because in the end, when that person makes the jump and people go, oh, like he was supposed to be, it's like it worked, like happily ever after. But like that's obviously not how it works. There's another after that comes with that. But I think things like movies and music are really like good ways to kind of portray that. And I really like how like your choices in movies and all of it, they have this kind of through line of just kind of like they're not happy, they're more realistic, they're more grounded. I mean, where do you think that comes from, that kind of perspective where even things that have a positive spin, they're still grounded, they're still grounded in reality, and you still see the truth through that?
So it's Wait.
Okay, I'll do that question again because it is kind of confusing. So basically, what I mean is like, so you're like, for example, we've gone through some of your favorite movies or your favorite writers or your favorite songs, right? There's definitely a through line of like realism, right? Like for example, Neil Gaiman, like he writes children's book, but there's a realistic approach to it. There's a psychological approach to it. Like Amy Winehouse, she's a beautiful singer with like amazing voice, but there's a definite realism about how she portrays her lyrics. Yeah, like where does that come from for you, and like how do you notice that in your own kind of taste, and do you notice that in your own writing, and where does that come from for you?
I mean, okay, so what I've noticed is that I do fall in love with art in the form of like movies and books and songs and stuff, when it comes from a place of taboo, like shame, kind of like when people don't like to talk about it, sort of like when people get embarrassed about things, they get told that something they feel isn't real, and when you can sense that in a story where it's like, for example, with Coraline, the movie, you'll get the more psychological terrors rather than the physical, because there is no real physical threat apart from obviously the stitching eyes. Apart from that, there isn't much physical threats. But then when you are growing up and you think to yourself, well, my feelings aren't valid because I haven't had any physical threats, like I'm not like homeless or whatever, but it's like
that's not true. Yeah.
It's like your feelings don't matter, and it is sort of like a double-edged sword, because when you do feel like that, it's first of all, if in one side it's true, you are better off in some ways, but it doesn't mean you're better off in other ways. And I think that's what these kind of stories are kind of compressing in these little formats, is that these artists and stuff have suffered. They felt ashamed for suffering because they've been told that the suffering doesn't matter because they are of a certain like group, or they're a certain type of person, or they're an artist, so it's like their suffering is meaningless. When artists are like miserable and then people just tell them just be happy,
paint.
just meditate and stuff. Like you have creative hobbies, but it's like that's not why we choose to do art. Is the reason why we do it is because it's an expression. It's the same way people do speeches online and do TED Talks, because they want to express something about themselves and share stories and stuff. And I feel like that is the core of what it is to be in this herd species that we are, because the way that we acknowledge knowledge
Nice. Let's go.
is literally it's how we evolve. Like it's literally archaeology. Like we literally anthropology. Sorry.
Doesn't matter. They don't know the difference.
we literally pass on knowledge. That's our purpose.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
The whole purpose of repopulation and reproduction is that we pass on knowledge to survive. And sometimes survival is also mental survival. It doesn't have to be physical survival, because in case you ever noticed, we're in a more civilized brick layered society where we're all living in houses and roofs and stuff. But it's like, there are people who don't do that, but the majority of us have more mental and emotional threats that we try to pass on to each other, like giving each other advice and things and stuff, and that can come in the form of songs and paintings and books.
I mean, that's a brilliant segue, actually, to go into something I really wanted to talk about today, which is paintings. I think you talked about expressions, and you talked about ways of expression. I remember I saw this thing where it was like the first artistic thing was this wall where the cavemen had put blood in their hands and just like stamped it there, and it was like thousands of years old, and it's like this was the first artistic painting. And I was just thinking, like, that's crazy how artists are just people who just don't want to be forgotten throughout time, and they're just like, oh no, like this is me, and I was here, and this individual with this kind of brain neuron cells in their mind, how they all connect, these experiences, all these things, it exists and they exist, and they want people to remember that going forward. I think such a brilliant way we show that, which I still don't understand, is this paintings. And like I know we've spoken about your art today, but I know a big part of your life is also paintings. So talk to me about your hobbies, maybe your passion in painting, and where that stemmed from also, and like what do you gain from that? What kind of meaning do you gain from also painting too?
So I mean, my painting stuff really started probably when I was in high school. I had been drawing for a while, but it was like just crayons and pencils and stuff, and I liked the whole idea of still life, just like painting what I see and drawing what I see and stuff. But that was like the foundation, because that's not what it is now to me. When you do pursue things like that, learning new ways to approach different topics like sketching or painting or doing charcoal and stuff, you start to realize there are different ways to do that, like different approaches to art, things like abstract expressionism. You get impressionism as well, like the Monet paintings. And then when you get interested in that, it's like a deep rabbit hole where you start looking into artists' lives and how they found their art style. And then you realize, oh wait, so if I do art, I'm an artist too, so what is my art style? And then you start to kind of like personalize yourself with these artists that you like. For example, with me, it's Van Gogh and Damien Hirst and Leonardo da Vinci, people like that who really inspired me, even though they were probably all long gone. Damien Hirst is still alive, I think.
Those are very different types of artists. What about them individually do you like?
Okay, well,
let's start with Van Gogh.
Van Gogh, he obviously was a tortured soul. He expressed
the OG tortured soul.
The OG one. He definitely suffered a lot mentally, and he didn't have much support. But the thing that inspired me the most about him is that he kept going no matter what. Like, he fully, like, people who found his bedroom, they had countless, thousands and thousands of canvases that he had destroyed a few of them, I think. I believe that is what he did. Like, he destroyed a few of his canvases. But the ones they were able to recover are now in museums and stuff, and sometimes you can still see the paint that he tried to paint over them, because there are restorative artists who tried to uncover all these paintings that he's destroyed because of his mental illness and his low self image and whatnot. So they actually tried to recover his artwork, which is really interesting to me, because he spent all his life being told that he is nothing. Like, no one liked his artwork. He was a crazy man who lives down the road, who sees monsters, and he sees patterns in the sky that no one else sees. He lived in a time that literally expressionism and impressionism were looked down upon, because they were seen as kind of like showboating, sort of, and very fantastical. And it was during a time period where people were more interested in reality, because they wanted to just they were very proud of how they overcome some certain issues in society, like with plagues and certain Great Depressions and whatnot. Basically societal downfalls that they're very proud of themselves for getting out of, and then they have artists like Van Gogh who combated this completely, just wanted to be himself, really. Just wanted to show people what he saw in the world, and they didn't like it. He ended up, passing away, and now we're here looking at his artwork as if he was never treated poorly,
What about people like Damien Hirst?
Oh, Damien Hirst is something else. I think he just does it for the lols. Like I feel like he's a troll, sometimes. Like he makes artwork that he knows will create outbursts in society. There was one that I saw it in my own eyes, the one with the shark. It was cut in half. He made a shark cut in half, put into formaldehyde, and that was the art piece.
What's formaldehyde?
Formaldehyde is like a see-through solid liquid that kind of solidifies and preserves what's inside. So some people would use formaldehyde to preserve like organs or like bugs from like millions of years ago, like you'll see in like museums where they have these fossils in formaldehyde because it preserves it so much. And that's what he wanted his artwork to be preserved, and he wanted to show all these different things. He had one where it was a bunch of butterflies. They were real as well, like real butterflies just in the canvas. And he did that, most people think, just to kind of stir the crowd a little bit, because he wanted to show people that artwork isn't just paintings and stuff. It's also, dismantling things in front of you and looking at it in a different way.
I've got a question on that. So what do you think about that? So you've just spoken about Van Gogh and how he was pushing up against the realistic paintings and the realism that his generation was so entrenched in. Then you spoke about Damien, who was kind of going against that. Do you think art, in a sense, is not about conformity, but it's about always pushing the boundaries of whatever your culture or your kind of society tells you is art? And do you think sometimes that we fall into that kind of trap, when every artist is trying to be non-conformist, but then in the end everyone's conformist in that way? What do you think the line is, and then like what do you think about that whole kind of scene?
I think that honestly, the artwork in this world seems to be quite self-destructive in a way that it kind of tries to make, it's like everyone's making fun of themselves, but in a very serious way. Like everyone is so serious. Like if you've been to a museum or like a exhibition, like it's just like, oh, what does this line mean? Oh my goodness!
Oh
and
my goodness!
It doesn't.
It's like, shut up, bruv. The painters can't hear you. Like,
exactly.
It's not gonna make a difference.
It doesn't have to mean anything. Like art is what you make of it. Art can be anything from improv and stand-up comedy, and it can be even just daydreaming, like you're creating something out of like your experience.
But then there has to be something that makes it art. If everything is art, then nothing is art. But like, what is that thing that makes it separate something mundane to be art?
No, that is the question.
Okay.
That is the question.
Okay.
Everyone tries to answer that. I think, my personal answer to that is finding your own personal truth. Everyone doing that, and kind of accepting the fact that we do have a mass consciousness. We all do have a consciousness that we all share. Like everyone has kind of like common beliefs and stuff based on where they're from, like cultural psychology and stuff, where depending on where they live, it changes their belief systems, and thus changes, if they become an artist, it changes what their art becomes.
Absolutely.
Adolf Hitler is a good example. Hitler made dog paintings, but he still ended up becoming a fascist. He still considered he considered himself an artist. He went to art school and everything.
That's crazy. He's not one of us. You disowned him time ago.
Like it's
but
just.
I know what you mean. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like art is definitely what you make of your own world.
Okay.
Everyone has their own individual consciousness.
Okay.
So yeah.
So going on that then, making it more individual to you then, what is art to you? What is your paintings like? What do you go for? I know you got a painting here. I want to go for it in a bit and just like, have you talk to me about it. But what do you, when you make something like that, when you make paintings, what do you go for, and what is your like thought process when you're making something?
So with my artwork, I usually with my artwork, it's very few and far between. I do fall into the trap where I feel like I can only make artwork if I'm feeling inspired, which is a bit of a slippery slope, because then you end up getting into art ruts where you don't make anything for ages. It's not a very sustainable thing if you want to be an artist for, but
I relate to that too. So like I'm the same way. Sorry. I'm the same way when it comes to my poetry. I can't write unless I'm inspired. And so there's times where I sit down to write and I'm like, oh, this feels practiced. This feels too practiced. And I know there's a time in my life where I'll have to learn to do that when I'm not inspired, but I don't want to write anything that I don't feel comfortable with. I don't feel like it is a truth. I think that's the kind of parameter that you're basing off to. Is it's truthful, and if you're truthful, then it inspires you. You could make something, but you want it to be something that you really truly enjoy. So sorry to interrupt, but yeah, go off that.
Yeah, no, it's like I saw this poem. I think it was by Charlie Bueswick or something like that. I think I'll send it to you, you can do like a thing in the description or something.
I'm not good at that, but yeah, send it to me. I'll listen to it.
I think it's called "So You Want to Be a Writer," or do you want to be a writer or something like that. And the entire poem is of him talking about if you make stories and then only want to create more if someone gives you good feedback, don't be a writer.
True.
If you don't feel the passion burning your soul, don't be a writer. And he does things like that like throughout the entire poem. And some people are saying that either it's too idealistic or it's very true, and he's just trying to deter people from doing it if they don't feel like it's what they want to do.
What do you think?
I think it's right. Like obviously there are some situations where there should be exceptions. I can't think of a life where I'm doing something that I'm just complacent with. I don't know, I just can't do it. If I want to look back on my life and think, wow, I did those things, even if I hate them. Like if I hate the way I did something in 1 year, at least I did it. At least I did it in
that time. It was a positive reflection of how I felt in that moment. So for you, okay, going off that then, just basically the question I had before. What is your process like when you come to painting, and how does that differ from when you're writing?
So, with my painting, I guess I can show it on camera.
Yes, please.
Do you want to unravel it for me?
Oh, this is like it's a good. So, I'll hold it up.
Yeah, this
First
is.
Off, that is crazy. Just have a look at that. The camera doesn't do it justice because I got a shit camera. But that is insane. So talk to me about this. Like, how do you start even beginning?
Oh, this one is a drawing of a door.
Okay.
It's just a picture of a door with the door handles and stuff. This is a lock, and this is where the door opens and shuts and stuff. And this door is locked. In the background, I've put different newspapers, and I've glued them to the background to make some texture and stuff. You can still read a few things. Like there's a crossword puzzle right there.
Yes, you can see it. Yeah. And you can see newspaper clippings here too.
I think this one was basically to do with the cliche concept of how doorways can open different opportunities. I chose the colours green, blue and things because those colours remind me of like the ocean and how deep it is. And everyone's door has, certain meaning to it. You have all your emotion going to it. And some people, when they try to open the door, it spurs up all this emotion inside them that makes them not want to open it. Kind of becomes scary to them. Like if I use all this black and grey because of how scary it must be, like all this dark in the lines. It's a door, like a wooden pane door. So behind it, it's just pure darkness. You don't know what's behind it. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I've seen some of your other paintings too. So like they differ in. So I've seen the one of the sunflower one, which is beautiful. It's like a sunflower that's also kind of like wilting, but there's parts of it which is not wilting. There's parts of it which is wilting. How does that Because obviously that means you don't go for one technique. You kind of really see what you're feeling, and then you project down to the page. Because I understand that when it comes to writing, but when it comes to painting, do you visualize an emotion? That's how your brain works. Your brain visualizes an emotion, then you just have the ability to kind of like
pictured that emotion onto paper, onto a canvas, or was it something that you just learned how to do over time?
I mean, there are obviously some inspirations that I take off from my artwork, like the colours yellow and blue obviously are, memorabilia of Van Gogh, because he was known for his yellow and blue paintings. But then I found my own materials and stuff and colours based on my own processes, and which is going to be when you close your eyes and you meditate and stuff, and some people will see colours, some people will see like patterns in their eyes when they close their eyes, and I think that's kind of interesting, because if you haven't got synesthesia, which is basically like your senses match together, so when you hear something or you smell something, you'll see colour. I haven't got that, but it's more like people can still have that same connection to colours, even if you haven't got that. Like it's a certain colour can provoke. Yeah. Provoke.
It's a new word.
It can provoke emotions, which is why people use the colour red in restaurants, because it provokes.
It's fine.
Hunger.
You're using that word from that one. It's provoke.
Oh my God.
Provoke.
So it makes you feel hungry, the colour red.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it does. The colour blue makes you feel calm or sad. The colour yellow makes you feel either anxious or happy, which is interesting. It's a very, very mixed colour.
Mixed kind of feeling, yeah. Okay, then here's a question then. The question I have now is, like, you've talked about your writing and your painting. Which one do you get more meaning from, and which one do you which one do you get more meaning from? Which one do you look to when you really want to express something, or does it depend on the expression that you want to have?
For me, I guess the meaning doesn't come from my artwork. It causes the artwork.
Ooh, go on.
So like, when I want to portray a meaning, it will come out as an artwork. I don't make artwork to portray a meaning. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, yeah.
Like, the things that I create are a product of me trying to find meaning in what I'm feeling, which is just a fancy way of saying you want to express yourself. But the things that I create kind of hold memories of what I was thinking and feeling during the time. So I guess you could say that it does depend on what I'm writing.
Which one's easier then for you?
I would say the easiest thing for me to do to express myself would be probably writing. It's fairly accessible, just get out your laptop or your phone. With painting, you have to get all your paints out, and then most of the time for me, this is a confession. I'll take out all my paints, and then I'll just lose energy, and I won't do it. I'll pack everything back out. Like I'll get so motivated that I'll get all my paints out, my canvas is up there, and I'm like, oh, I'm tired now. I'll go to sleep.
Yeah.
And then it's just sitting there, the blank canvas is just sitting there until I get the inspiration again. But by that time, it's already packed away.
Because you mentioned about how, like, you find meaning in the process of creating, and I wanted to touch on that because I actually I relate to that so much. Like, when it comes to writing for me, especially nowadays, because I used to be really focused on fictional writing and writing about just like stories and coming up with all these. That was a process. That was like me sitting down thinking about, okay, what characters am I going to write? What am I trying to say? But now that I really just go off like ideas. So like, I'll get an idea about, like, let's say culture, the difference between African culture and British culture, and then I want to go off on that, and then that really helps me kind of just sit down and be like, what am I trying to say? And then through that process, I'll come to understand what I'm trying to say. Or like, if I'm talking about love, I might not know what I'm saying, but I have like a bunch of ideas, and then sitting down and putting them together and getting to that stage. That end stage is the process what I'm trying to reach, and that kind of journey is why I fell in love with writing so much, because it's like it becomes like an activity which kind of it helps itself. It creates something at the end of it, but the process of it also is very enlightening and very enriching, because it just kind of puts your mind at ease, and I love that part of it. All right, cool. So I know we're getting time, we're losing time on our phone, we're losing daylight, all of that stuff. We gotta go. So I want to just close up and wrap it up. As an aspiring writer and painter, what advice would you give to fellow writers out there who are struggling to get their work out, or struggling to have confidence in themselves, to kind of find discipline, to kind of keep going, Like I know we're all in the same position, so maybe they'll take our advice because they know that we're also in the same position as them. We're not like better than them, but we're also figuring it out too. What kind of advice would be good for people trying to follow their own creative passions?
I would say, like I told you earlier, your villain era is a really important thing. Focusing on yourself, which is kind of like not in a self-indulgent way, but more like you are literally the only person living your life. Your consciousness is probably the most important things you'll ever have. Your ability to experience the world around you and your own body, your own mind and stuff. I guess it's also kind of embracing the fact that you are a villain in someone else's story.
True.
If you live your life trying to please other people, doing your artwork for someone else, or like, if you're doing it for someone that isn't yourself, that's when things will stagnate for you, because after a while you'll start to lose focus, and the people who used to like your work because you made it for them, they'll move on and leave you in the dark. So the only way that you and your artwork can progress at the same time is if you focus on your own progression and your own sense of experience, because again, we are all technically alone in this world. We will have experiences and friends and stuff, but you're the only one experiencing your own version of your reality. So I would say just make sure that you do that and don't worry about other people.
100%. I think that's what I had to realize too. It's like, just also, you don't have that much time. We walk around like we're immortal, but we're not. We are going to die one day, and although that's morbid, being able to meditate on that just gives you a sense of perspective about everything you do. Like, you don't have to just take it so seriously. It doesn't always have to be the perfect start. Just make a start. Get that page written. Sit down with your canvas, and even if you don't do anything, that's a process. The fact that you're doing that, you get comfortable doing that, and then you keep doing what you're doing, and you start to find the meaning in what you're doing. I think also we kind of like put everything to take it too seriously. Creating art is for fun at the end of the day. So try to have fun with it. Try to do things that you want to do, and not think about how every someone else is going to receive it. Like you've said, I think obviously you do care and you want to make it a career and all these things. But I got stuck in that in the beginning, saying like, okay, I want to do something that will be on my record. At the end of the day, you're doing things for who you are now. And that's most important. Like the day that day you woke up, you want to create something that you'll be proud of in that moment, or the next day, And you also think about like, what would the you tomorrow want the you today to do, Like, just think about just the time that you're spending, just in what you spend your time on. I think, and also be patient with yourself. There is a process. It is a process of just finding peace within creation of your art, and then the kind of loneliness that comes with that, pursuing the kind of loneliness that comes with pursuit. But that's part of it, and that's also a good thing. And it's never on someone else to tell you how you should experience that, how you should do with that. But do know that you are going to die. So you better get on your bike and do it quickly, because at the end of the day, no one's going to do it for you. No one's going to care. Okay. But okay. So to end this off, I already told you how I was gonna end it. But to end it off, what do you think about the process of life and death? Do you think about death? Do you fear death? Do you fear your own mortality? Do you fear your own? Do you end on a happy note? Do you fear your own mortality? What do you think about that?
It just reminded me of that scene in Batman vs Superman.
Yeah.
So, do you bleed?
Do you bleed? You will. Do you fear your own mortality? You will. But go on, do you fear death? Do you fear your own mortality? Do you think about it?
I had my moments. I have this crippling fear of black holes.
You said.
I still do. After all this time, I still do.
They're not even real. Like, I mean, we're never going to see them. If we see them, we're dead. So why would you fear them?
Because we won't know where they are until we're dead, okay. Which is kind of terrifying.
That is fair enough, yeah. But yeah, do you don't really think about death until it's like something like that?
I think about death sometimes when it's like you're in your own mind and you're like, oh, would everyone else be happier without me? But then you want to just think that aside from the whole depressor aspect of things, I would say that it's just a normal passing thought, and I think it's basically just your own survival. Like, you know, when you're crossing a road and you're like, oh lol, what if a car just hit me right now?
Or what if I jumped in the train tracks? Yeah.
Or you have that kind of mindset where you're like, oh, I could survive that.
Yeah, I could jump over the car, backflip and land on my feet.
Exactly, like someone could smother me with a pillow and I'll still like just lean my head and then like breathe.
Breathe out the pillow.
Like, you know, you have like all these survival thoughts and stuff, which is kind of funny. But I think honestly, the thing that I would say is your suffering is what makes you you. And the most sadistic thing that's about being a human, and I get this from the Buddhist mindset of how you have to accept suffering, is that everyone suffers in their own distinct way, right? Not like you might have the same like box tick when you're like doing like, oh, do you have like these thoughts? And yes, we do. We all think about death. But it's in very specific ways, as if we're all creating our own version of hell for ourselves day to day. And I think as artists, that's can be a lot for us as well, because we're also creating new creative ways to torture ourselves. You know, it's like we have very abstract thoughts, and some people will even go as far as coming up with their own like daydream land where they have like all these sick, twisted things. But I would say that it's normal, and if you're a creative, that's doubly so, because all we think about is, you know, the dark stuff. Yeah. It's all we think about. And to quote the great Joaquin Phoenix, all I have are negative thoughts.
That's a great way to end it. I mean, yeah, she doesn't mean all she has are negative thoughts, but I think she means like use that negative thoughts to fuel your creative endeavors. You know, don't just, you know, sit and wallow in them. You know, use them as fuel. You know, there's something I've learned recently too. It's like we always think about using positive emotions to motivate us, but actually you can use negative emotion to motivate you too. They're far more powerful. Obviously, they're not sustainable, so don't do that. But like actually do it in a way which prepares you from the position where you're in that negative state. So first, thank you very much for this. This has been amazing. It's been some technical difficulties. We've had to change locations. The phone's cut off a couple of times. There's been people walking in the back saying stuff, but I think it was good to get this in this moment. Like we always say, it's like a creative piece too. This is also a creative piece, and we did this together. We're in this endeavor together. I can't wait for the next one too, because I think we'll have way more to talk about. There's so much we didn't touch on today, just because we wanted to keep it short and sweet. But yeah, thank you very much. Is there anything you want to say before we close out? Any last thoughts? Anything you want to say to the people out there watching you?
I would say follow Jeff and listen to his story, because he has a lot more people coming in that will be very interesting and that will relate to you.
100%. I like that very much. She's 100% right. Follow me, subscribe. I didn't even do that, but yeah, follow me, subscribe. Yeah, there's 100% more people coming, and I think it's important because I feel like a lot of people I know I like us where we have this kind of thoughts, and I think getting them to speak about it is such an important thing because people out there can relate. And so yeah, if you relate to what we're saying, you know, follow the journey. Yeah, we're gonna try to conquer the world. All right, bro, I'll see you in a bit. Peace.